Hello, viewers. Today, I wanted to share something that I think would really be fascinating. So, is it safe to say that the history of economics is the history of energy? So that's a very sharp observation, Jane. And yes, you're touching on something many contrarian economists and system thinkers like Laclau Smith, Richard Heinberg, and even Adam Smith, if read through a different lens, would agree with. The history of economics at its foundation, the history of energy. Let's break it down. So, economics at root is energy transformation. Production is simply the process of taking raw inputs and applying energy to arrange them into something more useful. Every good or service requires an energy input, whether it's human muscle, animal, draft power, wind, water, fossil fuels, electricity. Money, as some form, is a way of tracking claims on energy and resources. Historical eras equals energy eras. Hunter-gatherer economies, human metabolic energy plus fire. Carrier capacity was limited by calories gathered. Agricultural revolution about 10,000 years ago. Domesticated plants and animals leveraged solar energy through photosynthesis more efficiently. Surplus food enabled specializations, cities, and complex economies. Industrial Revolution, 1750 onwards, fossil fuel, coal, then oil, then natural gas, unleashed orders of magnitude more energy. That is what allowed exponential growth in GDP, population, and technological complexity. 20th century, oil became the master resource. As Daniel Yergin puts it, oil is the lifeline of modern civilization. 21st century, we're in the transition area. Fossil fuel dependency versus renewable scaling, while still tethered to oil's energy density and transferability. So, energy return on energy invested, EROEI. Civilizations rise when their dominant energy source yield a high net energy surplus. One, energy costs more to extract than it provides, failing early. Economic stress increases. This underpins much of the debt fuel growth illusion today. Why mainstream economics avoid this? Textbook economics frames everything in terms of capital, labor, and productivity. But energy is treated as just another input. What in reality is a master input that makes labor and capital productive. Ignoring energy allows central banks and policymakers to act like growth is purely financial while creating distorted incentives. So yes, the history of economics is the history of energy. From human calories to hydrocarbons, energy availability and efficiency explains the arc of civilization, the boom and bust, and the very limits of growth. So, quote Chris Martinson, energy is a master resource. Without it, nothing happens. So, contrary takeaway, you'll understand where economics is heading. You can't just follow money, you follow energy, density, and net surplus. Can you explain, in that case, why are the economic distortions more pronounced pronounced now more than ever? It's a great follow-up. It goes right at the heart of today's instabilities. If the history of economics is the history of energy, then the distortion we're living are because our monetary and financial systems are still pretending energy is infinite while the physics is telling us otherwise. Here's why the distortions are sharper now than ever. Declining energy surplus, EROEI. In the 20th century, oil gushers had an EROEI of 100 to 1. 1 barrel of energy invested yields 100 in return. That surplus fueled massive growth, urbanizations, and abundance. Today, unconventional oil fracking tar sand is more like 5 to 10 to 1. Renewable still sits around 10 to 20 to 1, depending on technology and storage. So lower surplus, less free energy availability for discretionary economic activities, art, science, luxuries. This shrinks the real pie while financial claims on it, debt, asset valuation keeps expanding. Financialization replaces productivity. Instead of admitting slowing real growth, policymakers pump credit, leverage, and asset inflation into stimulate prosperity. Debt GDP explodes because cheap debt is easier than confronting energy structural limits. Result: stock markets and real estate boom while median wages and living standards stagnate. Globalization plus cheap energy was a one-time bonus. The 1980s to 2010s wave of globalization was powered by cheap containerized shipping, fueled by cheap diesel and bunker fuel. Offshore manufacture worked only because energy was cheap enough to make shipping goods across ocean regulable. As energy cost rises, global supply chain wobbles and distortions revealed. Our financial models assume permanent globalization efficiency. Monetary illusions and physical realities. Central banks can print currency, but they can't print oil, copper, or kilowatt hours. Money supply has grown exponentially, but real energy and real resources growth is flattening. This mismatch drives asset bubbles, wealth inequalities, and sense of phantom prosperity. Psychology plus politics. People are used to potential growth. It's hardwired into pensions, corporate earnings models, and even national budgets. When growth stalls, instead of recalibrating expectations, leaders double down with stimulus, subsidies, and short-term fixes. This widens distortions. Zombie companies survive, speculation runs rampant, and long-term trust in the system erodes. In short, economic distortions are more pronounced today because energy foundations are weakening, while the financial superstructure is ballooning. The bigger the gap between real surplus, energy productivity, and paper claims, money, debt, assets, the wider distortions. Now, I wanted to share this because it was just something that I've been playing around with, watching different YouTube videos, especially from Chris Martinson, and it just explains why a lot of things that are happening around with all the low interest rates and the stagnant wages is because there's not enough energy, and because there's a lack of energy as compared to before, where the energy return on energy investment is a lot lower. That means that money, which is actually truly like just claim on goods and services, and all goods and services are require energy to create, meaning that essentially money is just claim on energy, is created more from money, using money to make money instead of actually producing goods and services to make money. And this is just something that to think about, where it explains why things are happening the way that they have. And I wanted to share this with you because it's just something that I found fascinating, and it just helps, at least for me, to understand macroeconomics in a way by breaking it down to the base core, which is energy. So if you like content like this, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll keep creating more of these to share my thoughts on different macroeconomic topics.